Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Trevor McDonald from the Chilliwack Business Improvement Association.
And I am líya with the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all so much for being here tonight for this exciting All Candidates Forum. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Stalo people, Stalo meaning people of the river, and we are very honored and grateful to live, work, and play, and to host this event on these lands, as well as for our relationships with our Indigenous neighbors.
We're here today representing the Chilliwack business community. Our role is to support and advocate for local businesses. Now, tonight's forum is an opportunity for each of the candidates to address the issues that are currently impacting our businesses directly. We understand there are many concerns, questions, and topics to cover, and while we'll do our best to get through as much as we can, the focus of this forum, important to remember, is predominantly on the business community. And we're grateful for the business community support between both the Chamber and the Business Improvement Association. We deal with everyone in Chilliwack. Some quick housekeeping messages. We would ask that you turn your phone ringers to silent mode, please. For those of you that might not have Slido, Leanne is going to talk about Slido shortly. For those of you who don't have a cell phone, someone earlier mentioned they have a flip phone, and maybe don't have a phone with them at all. We do have chamber staff here. If they can wave, I think I saw Heather and Joe at each side of the stage. And if you have a question that you'd like to add to Slido, and it will get votes, you will talk to one of the chamber staff. They'll type it into Slido for you. And otherwise, we just want to welcome also our online viewers. We understand there's a lot of folks tuning in online for this, so thanks for your support. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to the hostess with the mostest, the co-host, and our moderator for the evening. Nice round of applause, líya, everybody, from the Chilliwack Chamber.
Thanks, everybody. All right, so for questions, we are going to be using Slido. You can do this through your web browser, or you can have downloaded the app on your phone. To access Slido, all it is a simple code. It's called the hashtag CHWK2025. In there, you can ask your questions, and it almost kind of works a little bit like Facebook. So once the questions are in the queue, you can read through the questions, and if you put a little thumbs up beside it, it will move those questions up in priority. And that's how, once we get to the Slido portion of the event, that's how we'll get to those questions. The first 5 questions have been pre-selected through the Chamber and Downtown Business Improvement Association, and questions pre-submitted by our business community. Those questions have been given to the candidates in advance, and we will start with those. In the interest of keeping this forum respectful and timely, each candidate, so Kelli and líya, welcome. We're so happy to have you both with us tonight. Thank you for being here. So you're going to get 2 minutes for opening remarks, 2 minutes to answer each question, and 2 minutes for closing remarks. If you wish to extend your response to a specific question, you will have 2 rebuttal cards, or you just have a little stick in front of you. Just kind of hold it up, and basically once the other person is finished articulating, I will circle back to you for further comment. And that will give you an additional 2 minutes to speak to that topic. Does that make sense? Cool. Our goal this evening is to provide the business community with the answers that they need. We appreciate everyone being here tonight and are grateful for your participation. Before we dive into tonight's questions, I want to provide a quick recap of the key priorities raised by the Chilliwack business community based on feedback provided to us. As we approach the provincial election, these are the critical issues our local businesses are urging candidates to address to ensure continued growth and success in our region. Agriculture and food innovation, education and workforce development, crime and public safety, transportation and infrastructure, and alleviating rising business costs. As we move forward with tonight's forum, we'll be focusing on how the candidates plan to address these important issues raised by our business community. And I think that is it. We're going to move on to, we're going to get started. You ready to rock? Yes? Cool. Cool. Okay, so I have gone through and made sure that I've kind of went through who goes first for each of them, and it alternates back and forth. So you each get a turn to go first, you each get a turn to go second throughout the whole rest of the evening, so it's nice and fair. So to start with the opening remarks, Kelli Paddon, running candidate for Chilliwack Cultus. Please, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for the territorial acknowledgement. I know that the Chamber and the Cultural Centre always make sure to take a moment to acknowledge that. My name is Kelli Paddon. I am the BC NDP candidate for Chilliwack Cultus Lake. I have lived here most of my life. This is a place where I've chosen to raise my children and where my family is. I came here when my parents were in the military, made a home here, and it truly is an incredible place to live. I wouldn't choose anywhere else. I've had several roles here working for community, starting out as an advocate, community support with Community Living BC, through Chilliwack Society for Community Living. I've worked and walked alongside survivors of violent crime as a victim service worker. I have been a sessional instructor at UFV, to name a few, and across the community, all of my roles have had one thing in common, and it has been taking care of people, lifting up people's voices, amplifying what they need to find a pathway to make sure that we can make it work. So for the last 4 years, I have been the MLA for Chilliwack Kent, and that role hasn't been any different. And now I'm putting my name forward, asking for your vote, asking to be reelected, because there's still more work to do. People are struggling. We've been able to do a lot together, and I've worked with a lot of people in this room tonight. And I'm excited for what comes next, because we've brought it far, and we're starting to turn a corner, and I'm looking forward to the work ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelli. And now over to you, líya.
Aiswail, líya tilsqui, Guelmuk tilsqui, Tulitaqua, Musqueam Samath, Ta'alis, Scowlitz, Kestis, Gaukale, and Chilliwack. My name is líya Warbus. I've been raised here in Chilliwack, British Columbia, part of the Point family in the community of Gaukale First Nation. I have roots all up and down Coast Salish territory, and I'm really proud to be putting my name forward as the candidate for the BC Conservative Party. I'm a mom. I have 3 beautiful kids, aged 4, 11, and 14. We're passionate about our community, about our culture, and about our territory. And I've been really lucky to grow up in a family of people who've been involved in amplifying the voices of our Indigenous community, especially marginalized people, and increasing the social determinants of health for our community members. I'm now stepping into a position where it's become apparent to me that we need to be building bridges with the larger community. We need to be working with everybody in Chilliwack to improve the standard of living for all of our citizens, to bring the change that all of us are feeling like we need right now. And I hope that I can do that by fostering the relationships that I've already created from growing up here and understanding this community very well and the needs of the people here, and bringing Chilliwack, I think, back to the safety and the prosperity that we all grew up with. So I really appreciate all of you being here tonight, and hello to all the people online.
Thank you. All right, ready for the first question. So Kelli, you're up first. And the first question is going to be on infrastructure and transportation. Can you outline the concrete steps and timeline your government will take to expand Highway 1 through to Chilliwack and beyond, as well as implement a comprehensive 20-year infrastructure plan that includes flood mitigation strategies? And please be specific about funding sources.
All right. Thank you so much for the question. I have 2 minutes to outline a 20-year infrastructure program. Go. All right.
Go.
Thanks for the question, though. In all seriousness, we know that David Eby and our team have made the largest infrastructure investments in British Columbia history. What was really important is that the voices in Chilliwack and the voices in the Fraser Valley be heard. I've heard from a lot of businesses, I've heard large, small, medium, about Highway number 1. And it's why we're expanding Highway 1 all the way to Chilliwack. We also hear about transit, because it's not just about moving goods, it's about moving people. And so having that, things like the bus on shoulder lane, that's going to be a game changer. I know that anyone who was on the highway coming here tonight may have experienced an accident. And the widening of the highway and the bus on shoulder lane are going to really be game changers around that kind of stuff. But one of the things, because we're looking forward, and David Eby and the whole team are excited about what's next as we continue to build. And we've announced the expansion of the West Coast Express. Now, this will connect people across the valley, and it will make it easier to move people who are going to and from work. I don't want to call you a worker, but it'll help with that commute. And I think that that's going to be really critical, because the last thing I know anybody needs when they're trying to get home or they're trying to get to that next meeting is to worry about whether they're going to get stuck on the highway. We're putting in the work to help that here in the Fraser Valley. The Provincial Transportation and Infrastructure Program for the next 20 years is a little more than I can do in 16 seconds, but that's what I've been hearing here in Chilliwack is important. Thanks.
Thanks, Kelly. And líya, the same question is for you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's good.
Okay.
So, in looking at the infrastructure and speaking to people at the doors, I've knocked on over 2,000 doors here in Chilliwack. We are in dire need of upgrades to the highway. We've committed to increasing Highway 1 to 6 lanes all the way from Chilliwack to Vancouver and getting to work right away within the very first term that we would be in government. We're also looking at infrastructure that's going to keep up with the demand and the growing population here in Chilliwack. We have so many people that are unable to maintain a good life in the city where they have extra money, and so we're seeing this flood of new people come into Chilliwack and call Chilliwack home. Our population is increasing, so we definitely need to look to the future and ensure that we're planning for not just what we can see in the next 20 years, but beyond, because things are moving very, very quickly. We'd also like to invest in flood mitigation plans so that we do not see the disaster that we've seen when Chilliwack basically became an island and we had no way to get to Vancouver, and the roads were also shut down to the interior, cutting us off from essential services and things that we need to be transported here. So we want to be ready for things like that. We want to plan ahead and make investment in the prevention and not the reaction. That's some of the things that we'd love to ensure happens right as soon as we get into office, and be committed to seeing those plans through all the way until they're complete.
Awesome. Thank you very much. The next question is around agriculture and food security. As we know, the business community is very interested in this topic. The question to you, and I believe, líya, you get to take the floor on this one first, is what precise policies or legislative changes will you introduce to modernize the ALR rules and support agri-tech innovations in the Fraser Valley? And how will you ensure these initiatives are prioritized in the first year of your term?
Yeah. I had a long conversation with a local farmer here, and I plan to meet and talk with other farmers to ensure that their voices are going to be the voices that inform any of the plans that we make moving forward. One of the things that I'm hearing our local farmers are really frustrated with is actually the ALC, and it's not working for them. There are so many mandates that are not responsive to their needs, that are limiting their ability to produce the food at costs that are affordable for them and for people that they're selling to. They're being undercut by a lot of the imported goods that are coming into Canada. 20 to 30% of our food is coming from outside of our borders, and we need to change that. We want to get to a place where we have locally produced food that's provided by farmers that are from inside of British Columbia. An example would be expanding the Buy BC program and doing some great tax incentives for businesses to buy locally. We need to support our farmers to get to a place where they can have their children also work on the farm. And that's been an issue with some of the mandates coming from the ALC, some of the restrictions. They're very frustrated and they do not feel heard. They do not feel like the conversation is a two-way conversation. They've asked for changes on these mandates that are crushing their productivity, and they're not getting anywhere. And so one of the things that I'd like to ensure that happens is that we're being responsive to their needs, that we're going to be a voice for them, and we're going to stand up for their rights and things and changes that they've been asking for a long time and that have not happened. And this is coming directly from them. I am just relaying their messages, and I would continue to do that on every single issue.
Thank you. And Kelly, the same question to you, and would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you, though. So this is actually just like any business, just like any conversation around what's needed as far as supporting business. It's a critical topic, and I'm really glad we're talking about agriculture and the ALR today. But more than that, so many of our farmers, I know when I'm going out visiting, for example, dairy farmers, these are families, these are family businesses, and you live right there with the cows. It's very important to make sure that when we're talking about the farms, we're recognizing the deep roots within the family units as well. I think that one of the things that I've been very excited about is the investments in agrotech that have been directly informed by farmers. We've been lucky enough to have councils and farmers even from Chilliwack, Kent, Chilliwack, Cultus, some of them, but informing directly the investments that we're making in the technology as we move forward, whether it's to be more resilient to climate change and climate disasters, whether that's drought or fire or flood, how we take care of the animals, directly inputting into that, sustainability and things like carbon capture. We have an incredible wealth of knowledge here, and the investments that David Eby's team is making around agritech, paired with the voices of farmers right here from Chilliwack, has been incredible. When we're talking about things like the cost of feed and the impacts of climate change, we can't underscore enough how much we have to build up that resiliency, and that's why there's such heavy investment in agritech here in the Fraser Valley and across the province.
Thank you, Kelly. Excellent. We're going to move right into crime and public safety. Definitely a hot topic, especially judging from the questions coming in on Slido. But the pre-selected question was, given and I believe, Kelly, you have the floor for this one first. Given the current challenges with crime and public safety in our communities, what specific measures will you implement to increase law enforcement resources, improve mental health and addiction services, and improve urban safety?
Thanks for the question. So 2 minutes is not long enough to dig into this entirely, so I'm going to share some information and why this is so important to me. I hear from people every day about their concerns about what's happening. They're worried about their neighbors. They're worried about people who are unhoused. They're worried about their businesses. I know that I'm hearing the struggle. What I'm also able to share is that with the City of Chilliwack, with SEPCO, with the Chamber, the advocacy that's been happening here in Chilliwack, our voices have been being heard, and there's action happening all the time, every day, to make sure that we're addressing this, whether it's in building supportive care spaces for people, complex care spaces, day shelter spaces, but also the recognition that there are people who are in our community who can't ask for help. And David has been clear that where people can't ask for help, that's where compassionate, secure care needs to come in for them. There'll be place for them, whether they're in contact with the criminal justice system at Surrey pretrial or in Maple Ridge. We also know that our youth are critical. And so adding mental health supports there, preventative care in the schools with a counselor in every school, and Chilliwack, between the city and the chamber again, and Chilliwack Youth Health Centre, we're going to have a new youth foundry here, which is incredible. We're taking a lot of different steps because this problem is complex. We have to prevent it, but we also have to lift up our neighbors, whether they're struggling with mental health issues, substance use issues, or affordability issues around homelessness. So we are investing as well in 250 more RCMP officers, recognizing that there is an intersection with crime and these issues as well at times. So I'm very proud of the work that we're doing here and look forward to the additional resources.
Thank you, Kelly. And líya, would you like me to repeat the question, or are you good to take this one?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
Yep.
Over to you for 2 minutes.
In Chilliwack right now, the issue is visible. And as I said, I grew up here as a young person, and I have not seen so many displaced people living on the streets and making a home in our public spaces, using drugs openly and freely. And there's no doubt in my mind that we need to reach out compassionately and help these people. And this is an emergency. We've lost, since the drug epidemic was made apparent in 2017, up to 15,000 people to drug overdose deaths. And the numbers keep on rising, and the people keep on getting younger. And I heard when people were talking about this issue on the radio, the accusation that we're politicizing a health issue and a mental health crisis. And where else are we supposed to bring the voices of these citizens that are suffering, if not to the political representatives who are supposed to be doing something about it? The crime rates in the downtown core is hard for businesses to manage because of their businesses getting damaged, because people not wanting to go in the front door because there are needles and drug paraphernalia and homeless people that don't have anywhere else to go. So we need an increase in the supports to the police to effectively do their job. We need to recriminalize drug possession and go after the people that are selling these toxic drugs and how these toxic drugs are getting into our communities and into our ports. And we have one of the highest populations of youth homelessness in Chilliwack, and there are not enough places for them to go. We need wraparound supports, we need care teams, we need absolutely everybody on board so that we can make change.
Thank you. Sorry, I hate to cut you off, but we're on a strict time limit.
Yeah, I saw the...
I hate to cut either one of you off. It's tough, but I know that we have a job to do tonight, and we have lots of material to get through. So thank you guys for being patient with me also. Mm-hmm. All right, the next question is around the rising cost of doing business in our province. What targeted financial incentives and tax relief programs will you enact within the first 12 months to help businesses manage rising operational costs? Please include specific examples and how you will ensure these measures are accessible to businesses in the Fraser Valley. And I believe, líya, you get that one first.
We're committed to seeing small businesses and businesses thrive in British Columbia. We're looking at eliminating the carbon tax, and hopefully by doing that, encouraging the federal government to follow suit. There was just a report, thank you. There was a report released by the parliamentary secretary recently that outlines the fact that the carbon tax is not good for the economy, And so we want to do things that are going to increase the middle class's ability to have money back in their pockets and not just meet their basic needs of food and shelter. And we know that many people are not even meeting those basic needs. And we have an increase of people that are going to food banks that have never had to frequent these places before. We want to look at cutting the business taxes in half to offer some relief for business owners. I'm self-employed. I own my own business, and I'm finding it very difficult to do business and to keep my media company going under a lot of the pressures that are coming down and the costs that are rising to just keep the lights on and get the equipment that I need and travel to the places that I need to go. So those are some of the commitments we're looking at. We'd also like to reduce the provincial regulatory burden by at least 25%. With a minister responsible for red tape reduction. We'd like to look at some of the inefficiencies that we believe can be eliminated in the public sector to improve private sector. We want to see small businesses thrive once again, and all of that is going to be wrapped in the other policies that we're looking at to improve the quality of life that we see when we're walking around in the streets in downtown. So there's a lot of things that need to happen, and they need to happen very quickly so that our middle class can actually have a viable life.
Thank you. And Kelly, I will also ask, would you like me to repeat the question?
Good, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
This is a great question. I know that when I sit down with businesses and when I've heard from the Chamber around a lot of advocacy, we've actually been really successful in making sure that that is heard in Victoria, and I look forward to continuing that. There's a lot going on to help reduce costs for small businesses, so it wouldn't be my first term. It would be continuing the work and going even further with what we've already done together. For example, you may know that when MSP was cut and the employer's health tax was brought in, I heard directly from businesses about that this was a burden. And one of the things that we did in response to that, and in response to advocacy, was that we doubled the exemption for that, which means 90% of small and medium businesses don't pay that tax anymore. That was a direct result of advocacy and partnerships and working together. When the other candidate talks about lower small business taxes, small business taxes are 25% lower now under David Eby than they were when Russ Dad was in government. And so I hear a lot of talk about things that we'll look at, things that we'll work on, but we're actually helping as well take care of your workers, take care of your families, because small businesses, I hear, the number one thing again that I hear is these are families, these are like families, and that extends often, especially when you walk downtown or in Garrison, to customers. So we're building the homes that people need, we're providing the training for skilled employees, we're providing and expanding childcare so that more people than ever can return to the workforce, and that has been a game changer. So I will continue to advocate directly from businesses and bring that to Victoria, but also recognizing we need to take care of our community as a whole.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, moving on to education and workforce development. This is the fifth and final pre-selected question before we're going to move into the Slido questions. So if you have questions, please remember, I believe it's hashtag CHWK2025 on Slido if you would like to ask a question. But the fifth question, and Kelly, I believe you take this one first, is how will you directly increase funding and expand programs at the universities within the Fraser Valley to align with the needs of local industry? And what measurable outcomes will you commit to achieving within your I guess for you, it would be your next term. Líya, it would be your first term to ensure our workforce development meets regional demands?
I love this question. So I know that we all love University of the Fraser Valley, and a lot of these investments have already started. I'm so excited to talk about this one. You may have noticed a couple of weeks ago, David Eby was here, and I got to stand alongside him as he announced we are doubling the number of apprenticeships in the province. It's $150 million to double that number, and that is going to be incredible as we continue building BC and as we continue to fill family-supporting in-demand jobs. We also know that there are programs, there are micro-credentials. We've already started those. There's dual credit ECE happening at UFE. There's trades programs in high schools. We are preparing our youth for the jobs that will be in demand as we build a clean economy that really drives us forward as a province, and I'm so excited about that. We've also, with the increasing the apprenticeships, put in a fund, included a fund there that will remove barriers for people. So if you have childcare barriers, if you have, transportation barriers, if there's something in the way of you reaching out and you being part of us building this amazing province together, we're going to take care of that, because we know that we need a diverse workforce to be as strong as possible. I could talk about this, I know, 35 seconds. I am incredibly excited by the investments we've made so far and the investments that we've announced. We're also attracting, we built a new medical school. We're going to be graduating doctors here, and that is more doctors and nurses and midwives. I am incredibly excited about our future, and that's one of the reasons I'm so proud to be part of a team that really knows and sees and is building that prosperous future that is hopeful for our kids and each other. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kelly. And Líya, would you like the question again?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're making my job really easy, both of you. Thank you.
I want to cut down the time. Okay. So in terms of education, I come from a family and a community that has some of the most educated and advanced educated people per capita, and I'm really proud of that. My mom's worked in education all of her life, and she's the reason that I went back and I obtained my degree at UBC. So when I think about getting an education, it's very tough for people to study away from home. We need to support people who are returning to school, what they call adult learners, to access more innovative programming here within our community at UFE, support the trades. We need to support advances in tech, innovative farming, and those kinds of programs, and we need to advocate for the money to be going to our local programs. When I hear that there is a medical school opening in Surrey, that's exciting, but at the same time, I immediately think about people who cannot travel to go and obtain their education, and how are we upholding and encouraging these dollars to come to our local institutions so that we can build those programs for people to be able to learn from their home, so they don't have to travel and have to obtain that degree away from their community and their supports. Again, childcare is an issue, but when you live at home, close to your parents and your family and your community, you have more support to be able to go and obtain that education. So we definitely want to ensure that the money is coming into the community, that it's staying within the institution that's local, and that we're supporting students that are coming out of high school to go into programs that are going to help the areas that we need to grow within our community, and we also need to be better at retaining that talent here.
Thank you. All right, so Kelly has raised her card and would like to speak further to this question. Kelly, you have 2 minutes.
All right. I'm aware of the time. I will try to.
It's right in front of you. I don't know how you can be, but go ahead.
It occurs to me, just listening to the other candidates speaking, that there have been a lot of things mentioned that are already happening. That we're growing, that we're expanding on. For example, when we had the agriculture question, acknowledging that there needs to be processing of food closer to home. that work, those initiatives are at work, actually right here in Chilliwack. When we talk about building for climate resiliency, a huge part of the work on Highway 1 is making sure that that road is never underwater again. So in addition to climate work that we're doing to prevent and protect, we're also building back in a stronger way, and that work expands throughout the valley. When we talk about things like secure, compassionate care, that work, it's happening. We've identified the sites. Dr. Vigo, an international renowned expert, has helped us identify exactly the people who need that additional support, who can't ask for help, as well as what is required to wrap around. And we're building the beds. We're building the treatment. We're building the different kinds of treatment and response for people, because different people are in different places and we have to meet them where they're at. But the reason I put up my card is because when we're talking about people accessing education, we're talking about, the benefits of being in community. I love my community. And I do have people that can offer support. But I didn't have the ability to do things before when childcare was not available, when the previous government that Rustad was a part of gutted it, and I had to work opposite shifts to my partner and didn't see him for 3 years. So I'm going to just push back a little bit on that. The childcare is important. It changes things for businesses. It changes things for opportunities for the people in our community.
Thank you, Kelly. You're good? Okay. All right. We are now going to get into our Slido questions. And once again, I believe I have my staff kicking around over here somewhere. I have Heather over there on that side. I don't know my left and my rights because I'm backwards to you guys. So Heather is that direction. Joe is over in this direction. If you don't have access to Slido on a phone or a tablet and you would like to ask a question, please see one of them and they would be happy to enter that for you. We will do our best to get through as many questions as possible in the given amount of time. I'm going to look at my watch here for a time check. So I think we got about maybe 40 minutes or so. I can't remember. I'm hoping, Trevor, you're going to keep me on track here because 20 minutes. Okay. All right. So the first question on Slido, and I believe, Robbie, is it going to come up on the screen here for me? If not, that's okay. I can read it to you. Okay. So the first question, and this is going to go to líya first. Job creators are being punished by government with taxes exceeding 50% of their income. Is it time to reduce income tax to recruit the best and the brightest in BC? Can you repeat that? Job creators are punished by government with taxes exceeding 50% of their income, so employers. Is it time to reduce income tax to recruit the best and the brightest in BC?
Okay. One of the things that we are committed to is reducing the tax burden and taking tax dollars that we do retain and spending them responsibly. I understand that the public sector has grown by 1/3 in the past 7 years, and I'm not sure if we've seen quite the return in services that we deserve. The other piece that we're looking at is to give relief to people by allowing them to essentially claim a part of the rent or the mortgage that they pay, which could amount up to, at its highest point, $36,000 for anybody that rents or owns. And that's going to put more money back into their pocket. And I believe once our average consumer has more money to spend beyond just their basic needs, that the entire economy is going to get moving again, and we're going to see people that are going to be able to go out and frequent businesses. And this is going to have a ripple effect, because they're not going to be so burdened and overtaxed that people are going to enjoy a little bit more of the freedom of life. They're going to enjoy a quality of life that's better. And I do believe that we need to do a lot more to retain talent here in British Columbia. I, again, have been talking to a lot of the people and the citizens in this riding, knocking on a lot of doors, and one of the things that Ken shared with me recently is that he has a friend that works for DeVry, and they are making no investments in BC. Their investment dollars are going into the United States and other provinces where they know they're going to see a return on their money. So BC needs to step up their game.
And Kelly.
Thanks so much. So when you hear 53% marginal tax rate, or over 50%, that question, that's not talking about you. That question is a direct result of Chip Wilson's billboard, because that is the highest tax rate. So if the talent is being a billionaire, then yes, we are going to pay taxes, we're all going to pay our fair share, and we are going to see growth in the public sector service because it was gutted. So we're going to see more nurses, we're going to see more doctors, we're going to see more teachers, we're going to see more of the services that people need. And yes, I do understand that a tax rate of 53% would be a hard pill to swallow. If you were one of us, if your income was a level that any of us here in this room were working on, and I'm sorry if I'm failing to acknowledge a billionaire, my apologies. And my appreciation, because it means that our community has incredible talent, and that's absolutely accurate. Providing jobs is incredibly important, but when we are talking about Chilliwack and when we are talking about businesses in Chilliwack, I want them to thrive, I want them to grow, but we are not usually talking about huge businesses where we would be talking about a 53% marginal tax rate. We're talking about small businesses, medium businesses that are the lifeblood of our community. And their families and their employees, they need the services as well that this pays for. We are all seeing finally that we're turning a corner. We need more teachers, we need more nurses, we need more doctors. So I would argue with the premise of that question.
Thank you, Kelly. And líya has raised her rebuttal card, so you have 2 minutes to speak to that question again.
I want to make it clear when we talk about public sector bloat and an increase in bureaucrats, we are not talking about the essential frontline workers that we all know that we need. Of course, we need to support more teachers, but where are we going to get them from? I've talked to teachers, I've knocked on their doors. My kids are all in school, my mom was a teacher. And the issue is that we're not retaining talent and people that want to live in British Columbia anymore. A third of the people that live here are thinking about moving away or packing their bags, and they're leaving right now to go to other provinces where they can afford to live. So I just want to make it clear, we're talking about a mismanagement of people that are not at the front lines, but an increase in bureaucrats and project managers and people in the middle that are not making any of these systems more efficient, not from what I can see as an average and everyday citizen. Of course, we need to reallocate those funds so that we can have more doctors, more nurses, and more teachers. But how are we going to attract and keep that talent if they can't afford to live in British Columbia? We need some real solutions to be able to take graduates that are leaving these institutions and retain them here at home. They are being attracted by big money in other places, and they're not wanting to stay and make a life here. That's what I'm hearing from people. We have people that come here to work and then they leave again. So in order to ensure that our communities are going to keep growing, we have to support them to do that.
Thank you. So I will note that you both have used your rebuttal cards once each, so you both have one more chance at being able to use that throughout the rest of the forum. Thank you for not hitting each other or me with those sticks, but thank you for that. We will now move on to the next question, and that is going to go to Kelli first. And this question is around EHT again. Is it time to get rid of the EHT to help businesses in our community?
So I think I started canvassing this before, but it's good to get another 2 minutes to talk about small businesses and the pressure that's on them. So currently, in response to what we heard directly from small and medium-sized businesses, 90% of employers do not pay the EHT, the employer health tax, which came after we canceled MSP, for those of you who may not be employers. In supporting small businesses, 90% it was a huge result from that advocacy because we doubled the exemption limit there. Now, when we are talking about supporting small businesses, we know that we have to support the employees so that employers can find employees, so that they can keep and retain employees, so that their families are well supported. So that again comes down to investments in childcare, making sure we've reduced the tax on small business by 25%. I am very excited to hear about what comes next as we continue to build. What do businesses need next? Because we have been very, very nimble in the response to different things. I remember when the flooding happened and when businesses said, we need to do something different. When COVID happened and businesses said, we need to do something different. The ideas that come from here, come from Chilliwack or around the Fraser Valley, directly from small and medium-sized business owners, have been crucial in forming the way we do business in British Columbia and have resulted in more people making investments in British Columbia. And so I'm looking forward to what comes next and which levers we can advocate for together.
Thanks, Kelli.
For this question, I would revert to speaking with small businesses, medium-sized businesses in this riding and understand if the EHT is working for them. And if it's not working and we have a viable alternative, then I am all about responding to that and getting rid of it. I guess, one more add-on.
Okay.
The point that I'd like to make is that we need to be more responsive to our communities and stand up for what they're asking for and what they're telling us works and doesn't work, instead of upholding some sort of ideology or towing a party line. I am going to ensure that I'm a voice for the people in Chilliwack, and that means everybody, you know, whether you're favorable of their opinion or not. We need to find a way to include everybody's voices and make balanced decisions that actually reflect the community that we come from, not ideologies that are passed from the top down.
Thank you. You still have 47 seconds. You're okay to forgo that? Okay. And the next question, favorable. If you guys are paying attention on your app, we are working through the top 5 questions that are coming through on Slido. So if your question is in the queue, the best way to get it into the top is to use the little thumbs up on the side, and you can move it up and down that way. The next question is, would you consider freezing or reducing the minimum wage? Small businesses are struggling to keep their doors open. Líya.
This is a heavy hitter of a question because so many people are affected by being able to make enough money as an employee But on the other side of things, what I'm hearing from business owners is that the increase to the minimum wage, when they're competing with people from outside of our borders who can get foreign workers to work for way less, meaning that their product is a lot cheaper and they cannot compete, then where do we find the middle ground between those two struggles? I do not have the answer for that today, and I don't feel comfortable providing it without having more discussions from both sides of this issue and coming to a consensus that's going to uplift all of the people that are involved in the equation so that no one is getting undercut. But I can say, by making life more affordable and balancing the budget in BC and bringing us back from an $8.9 billion deficit that we're facing right now to a surplus that we're seeing in other places, that we can absolutely take a look at improving things on both sides of the equation for everybody.
Thank you. I'm just going to give them a sec, Kelly, to reset the timer. Do you need me to repeat the question? Okay.
There we go. So this is an important question that in a different room, what I hear is, would you consider increasing the minimum wage? Depending on which room you're in, which people you're talking to, and what the situation is, you're going to hear the different side of the question. But my answer remains the same, is we have come this far together by the voices of our community, the businesses, the individuals, the families, the owners, the employees, labor, all sides contributing to that conversation. We have raised minimum wage, and we have the highest minimum wage in Canada. And there are significant improvements and positive consequences of that, and of people being able to rely on the fact that that wage has been set and tied the way it has. But I'm also hearing, and I have heard before and sat down and had conversations with small business owners, medium-sized business owners, who say that this is a burden. And there have been a few things that have definitely improved the condition for their workers, but they're struggling with it. Part of the way that David Eby and the whole team are approaching this is by growing our economy and making sure that across the board all ships rise. That's it, right? A rising tide raises all boats. BC has the fastest per capita GDP growth in Canada. We have come out of this together in a way that has positioned British Columbia to lead the way in a sustainable, clean economy. So when we're talking about local issues, because think local, act global, that's the saying, we need to continue having these conversations so that when the decisions are being made, as they have in the past, our voices and the voices of our business owners are heard at that table.
And that's time, Kelly. Sorry. Líya, you have 2 minutes to respond. And that's your last response card, just so you know. Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Just kidding, I take it back.
Go ahead.
Okay. So when we talk about GDP and gross domestic product, and we use statistics, we have to look at the entire picture and where we've come from. We just came out of a global pandemic. And so going from very, very little movement and productivity, of course our GDP is going to increase from there. But we need to look at those numbers in comparison to the whole picture in Canada and other countries around the world. And what does our output actually mean, and what is our bottom line? So I just want to share, based off of some of the comments made, that we have a thriving private sector here in British Columbia. And this is coming from the Business Council BC report on economic perspectives. Private sector job growth is the weakest it's ever been. and the only reason overall employment in BC's grown is because the unprecedented expansion in public sector hiring. When contrasted with other provinces, the situation in BC is more concerning. In other provinces, the public sector has played an outsized role in job creation, but nothing like BC. We estimate the number of employees in the private sector is 180,000, or 9% below business as usual extrapolation. From January 2022 to June 2024, there is little indication that private sector is picking up. Instead, the unusually anemic growth in the private sector employees means the gap between the recent trend and the pre-pandemic trend in private sector hiring continues to widen. I want people to look into these matters themselves just like I have, and don't take what I say, but look for it yourself.
Thank you. And Kelli, that is your last rebuttal card, response card.
Okay.
You're up. 2 minutes.
Thought I was being silenced there for a minute. With all due respect, you're right, we do have to look at the entire picture. We have come out of a pandemic, and we've come out of flooding, and we've come out of heat domes, and we are in the midst of a heartbreaking opioid crisis. We are in the thick of it, and all I can say is thank goodness we have a government that is investing in people, that has invested in people, and that understands we can't cut our way out of it. But the facts directly refute any claim that BC's economy is not doing well, is broken. BC has, like I said, the fastest per capita GDP growth in the country. In the last year, BC is leading Canada in private sector growth. We are seeing record investments in our province because people understand that through our climate action, through our reconciliation action, BC is a reliable place to invest. We are leading the way. This is not just leading the way between us and Alberta, which, that's small. All of Canada. In all of Canada, BC has the highest hourly wages that we just talked about, which supports workers, and we are working directly with our small and medium-sized businesses to find ways to better support them as well. BC has the fastest growth in capital investments in all of Canada. We are building our province. We are replacing our grandparents' infrastructure, which should have been done a long time ago, and we're doing it by, yes, building with people who have family-supporting jobs. We're providing training so that we can continue to build. We've electrified our highway. This is an incredible time, and things are tough, but
that's time. Thank you. Okay, you were looking at me like, okay, what's next? You're ready for the next question. You guys threw me off there, so I feel like, I think, is it, líya, do you get this question first? I don't want to screw that up. I think that's where we're at. The rebuttal card threw me off. You're first. Okay, perfect. Thank you for working with me on that one. All right, so your next question. Do you believe it is important to balance the budget? If important, what are some... Something just happened there. Oh, here we go. If it's, sorry, I'm working off Slido. My iPad died, so now I'm trying to work off a phone. We're winging it over here. Do you believe it is important to balance the budget? And if it is important, what are some concrete examples of programs or services that you would recommend changes to? Kelli, oh, there you go.
There we go. Thanks for the question. I absolutely believe that balancing the budget is important. I don't think that it should be done on the backs of British Columbians, but it's important for us to have this conversation. I'm really glad the budget question came up. I wasn't sure if it was going to. We were cutting short on time there. In order to reduce the deficit, because we're not going to do it by cutting services. We're not going to do it by cutting $4.1 billion from healthcare. We're not going to do it by privatizing health contracts and firing 10,000 predominantly women so that we can pay them less. We're not going to do it by cutting services and education and access. We're not going to do it by cutting transit. We're not going to do it by making a support worker sit in a residential service in community living and have to justify why the women they serve deserve that support. And that one's a personal one. We are going to do it by investing in skills. We're going to do it by investing in health and infrastructure and investing in people. We have and will continue to power an economy for British Columbia through critical minerals. We will continue to power British Columbia by building BC and by continuing to grow a clean energy economy. The infrastructure and the technology and the skill development and the opportunity, David Eby understands and has presented a plan where we will reduce the deficit. Absolutely we will, but we're going to do it by helping people rise and by helping people grow and by giving opportunity. We will not try to pretend that you can cut your way to success.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. Let me find it. Just kidding. Do you believe it is important to balance the budget? And if it's important, what are some concrete examples of programs or services you would recommend changes to?
Okay. Right. When we talk about responsible fiscal spending, we want to take a look at where is the money going to be coming from. And we are not going to be cutting programs and services that people need, that is vital to their survival, that is vital to them accessing the services and healthcare that they need, the services and social service that they need. The $4.1 billion cuts that people keep referring to and talking about, that's not true. That is not something that we're looking at. We do not want to cut funds for healthcare. We want to increase the funds, but we want to reallocate the funds into the front lines and support doctors and nurses. We want to retain and attract the people in BC that we need to do these jobs. So when we talk about balancing the budget, we need to invest in some of the rich resources that we have here when we talk about projects that have been on hold and that are taking years to get permitted and to get going. I'm talking not just 2 to 3 years, I'm talking up to 15 years for projects to be approved. And in the meantime, those projects and places and towns that depend on those mines or developments that they depend on to feed their families are being shut down. And then those people are leaving BC and those dollars are leaving BC. And people are taking their investments elsewhere because there's so much red tape and inefficiency to get things moving. And another example would be at the municipal level, where the municipalities are so frustrated by being told from a top-down fashion what to do, how and where they need to build housing. They know their communities, they know what to do. We need to stop being so prescriptive and listen to people.
Thank you. All right. We are getting close to the time, so this will be our last question before we move into closing comments. I like this question. And so I believe, Kelli, this one's yours first, is that correct? No, líya, sorry, okay. You're keeping me on my toes, I like it. Okay, what would you tell a potential voter who likes you as a candidate but dislikes the party you represent? I did not write these questions, just so you know. The audience would love to know the answer to that.
When I talk to voters, and this happens every single night when I'm on the doorsteps of the citizens of this town, and I plan to be on the doors all the way to Election Day to meet more people and talk to as many people as I possibly can. I tell them that I am here to represent you. At the end of the day, if I'm elected and I'm sitting in that chair to represent Chilliwack Cultus Lake, it is about representing the people that live here. Party politics are one thing, and it may be a way that we can find common ground and common goals, but I'm always going to use my voice and amplify the voice of the people that are here, because we have 93 distinct ridings in British Columbia. It is not the same in Chilliwack as it is in East Vancouver or Victoria Beacon Hill or Prince George or Prince Rupert, right? We have so many different concerns and issues that affect people differently. We are so diverse, and I believe that diversity makes us stronger. The multiculturalism makes us stronger. You know, the differing orientations for all walks of life actually make us stronger. And when I'm sitting in the room with people where maybe all of them think differently than me, I believe I'm the asset in that room. And I want to bring differing perspectives to hard places and hard conversations. And I want to still stand up for the values that I believe in, but more importantly, the values of the people that live here. It's about the people that live in Chilliwack and bringing those voices to Victoria and standing up for them, even when it's hard, even when I'm standing up against a room full of people.
Thank you.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Take it away.
All right, I think that this might actually be one of those questions. They're not usually a surprise. You usually kind of know, but I really like this question. So my proof point for the work that I've done is the work that I've done. I am the BC NDP candidate because my values align there, and I am proud to be part of David Eby's team. I want to help our community with costs. I want homes that people can actually afford. I want to make healthcare better and stronger. I want our streets to be safer. I want to address climate change right head on. And the team that I can do that best with is the BC NDP. That being said, I'm happy to be part of that team, but the work that we've been able to do together and the strength of the relationships that we've been able to develop, whether that's been, government to government with First Nations, whether that's been with the City of Chilliwack or the Fraser Valley Regional District, whether it's been with local businesses, we've been able to do so much. We announced we're getting a new Bradley Center, and we did that together. We have had over $200 million invested in our schools. We have over 300,000 permanent student seats through expansions and new schools. We did that together. So I stand in this community. Those are a couple of examples, but I could go on all day about what we've been able to accomplish together. So actually, I have heard someone say to me that they're going to vote for me, but they're not sure about the party. They're not sure. And to that I say, it's our values, our common work together, our partnerships and our relationships that are building and fixing and having a voice in government as part of David Eby's team. Well, that's gotta be gravy, right?
I got this stuff in my truck.
All right. I recognize to the audience that there is a ton of questions in the Slido queue, and I know that you're all patiently waiting for your question to be answered. And I'm really, really sorry that in a minute or two we're going to jump to closing remarks from the candidates, and I do hope that they have been able to provide you answers to some of the questions that you were looking for. And I do want to say that on behalf of the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Business Improvement Association, while all of the issues from healthcare to infrastructure to education to all of those things, they are all so important. But because of our organizations and who we represent and our mandate, we had to predominantly focus this forum on business. And I know that doesn't necessarily sit well with everyone, so for that I do apologize. I do know that our candidates they have offices, they are door knocking, they are willing to meet with you and chat with you, so go online, find them, and reach out and have your questions answered that way. I have talked to some of you and I have heard you, and I will bring your concerns about potentially other community type forums that can be a little bit more widespread. I don't have an answer for you, but I can definitely take it to different groups and different people within the community to see what that looks like in upcoming and future elections. So I just wanted to address that. And then I'm going to turn it back to these lovely ladies for your closing remarks. And I can't remember who's supposed to go first. I think I have Líya. You're up first.
Great. And it's líya. Thanks. My interest in running for this position has always been to represent the voices of the people, and especially the voices of the marginalized, of the successful, of the ones who cannot speak for themselves, that are having a tough time, of the people that what we would consider to be the right, the left, the center. And what my concern right now with our society is that we're comfortable in these camps that we call political affiliations. And when we sit in these camps and we sit apart from each other and we're unwilling to have civil conversations about hard topics that we're facing, that we're not going to carve a path forward that's going to be satisfactory to everyone. It's going to cater to one side or the other. And what I believe that I bring to the office and to the position is a balanced perspective that is going to include everyone's voices as best that I possibly can. I grew up here, and yes, I'm Indigenous, and yes, I'm a woman, and yes, I'm a mother, and yes, I'm a part of the LGBTQ community. But I do not allow myself to be defined by those labels. I've been asked, how do you expect to represent everyone if you're just worried about Indigenous issues? And the fact is that I am you, all of you that are sitting here in the auditorium, all the people that are watching online. And I'm not about the labels that have been applied to me. I'm about the passion that I have for bringing change to BC and especially to Chilliwack.
Thank you. You're up, Kelli.
Thanks so much. Thanks for all the questions tonight. If there are people who we didn't get to your question, please feel free to reach out. If I do knock on your door and you have a question and you offer to let you can probably ask me the question while I'm doing that, because I'm sure my colleague here would agree that sometimes that's good. Or a snack. So our plan, I'm the BC NDP candidate because my values align. And I'm proud to be part of a team with David Eby. His plan provides a vision for a prosperous and a sustainable future that we can all look forward to. Our plan takes action to help people and their families so that you don't just get by. And I know it feels sometimes like you're just getting by, but that you can get ahead. We have a middle-class tax cut that means a little more every month, and well, right away, but then a little more at the end of every paycheck. That's going to make a difference as we continue to build our economy. The plan defines and delivers solutions to the things that we're struggling with: affordability and housing and access to healthcare. And there is a lot of talk about what we've done so far, because those are the building blocks that we're building on. 800 new doctors, net new doctors in BC. Over 4,000 people a week being connected to a family doctor. We're turning corners, rent going down. That one I had to look up twice. But I want to say before I'm done, thank you for your trust and for allowing me to do the work for the last 4 years. BC is different and better in ways for my kids that I can't express how grateful I am that you let me be part of building that. And I look forward to building what's next with you.
Thank you, ladies, to both of you for a great discussion. Thank you for being respectful, professional, making my job extremely easy. I appreciate you both for that. Thank you for your thoughtful responses and addressing the key issues that our business community have shared with us, and taken the time to address those challenges and opportunities facing them today. We appreciate your time very much with us. We wish you both the very best in the next couple of weeks as you continue to campaign. I said couple, oh, okay, 9 days. Well, is it, well, okay, in the next 9 days. Okay, well, it's been a blur. Yeah, advanced voting started today. Hopefully you guys know where your advanced polling stations are. If not, I'm sure you can find them online. I do not have them in front of me. They might be coming up on a future slide. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Thank you to the audience for bearing with us, for being here tonight. Yeah, go vote. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, just a reminder, we would love if you stuck around for round 2 as well. Coming up, take a quick break here. We're going to take about a 15-minute pause and switch up the tables, and we invite you to come back and hear from Dan, Heather, Tim, and Dan.
The mics do come off the stand if you want to hold them. They shut off automatically when I talk. No, but they both shut them. Four? Okay.
That's how you kick it off.
No, it's you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Round two of our forum. We're so grateful for you making time to be here tonight. My name is Trevor McDonald from the Chilliwack Business Improvement Association, and this is Liana Kemp. Liana is going to be doing many, many chores tonight. Liana, great job first round.
Thanks, Trev, and thanks for being my co-host, co-MC.
My pleasure.
Supporter of all things. So we're so happy that you could all join us here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. It's important for you to hear the answers to the questions and then to be able to make your decision, what's best for you, and get out and vote. So thank you again for being here and for participating. Before we begin, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Stalo people. Stalo meaning people of the river. We are very honored to be able to host this event on their lands today, as well as other events throughout the community, and we're very honored for the relationships that we hold with our Indigenous neighbors.
We're here today representing the Chilliwack business community, and our role is to support and advocate for local business. Tonight's forum is an opportunity for each of the candidates to address the issues that are currently impacting our business directly. We understand there are many concerns, questions, and topics to cover. While we do our best to get through as many as we can, the focus of this forum, as we've already been pretty open about, is predominantly on business-related issues. A couple of housekeeping things to make sure we're have our phones on vibrate tonight. And for those of you that maybe don't know about the Slido format, that is how we get our questions up to the candidates. If some of you didn't bring your phones or maybe don't have a phone that has Slido available on it, we have chamber staff on each side of the theater. And they will take your questions, so just make your way over to one of our chamber staff, doing a great job tonight, and they will type the question in for you so that it gets up on the slider to be voted on. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the one, the only Liana Kemp. She's been doing an amazing job tonight. So once again for Liana Kemp from the Chilliwack Chamber.
Thanks, Trevor. So as Trevor mentioned, we are going to be using Slido. You can access Slido either from a web browser on your phone, or you could have or may have already downloaded the app. To enter into the forum questions, please just use the code that you see on the screen here, hashtag CHWK2025. I think I was in the wrong year when I did this, so forgive me, but this will get you access to the forum questions. It's been a month. Anyways. You can also, like Facebook, use the thumbs up to like the questions of your choice, and that will basically help us identify the priority questions from the audience. As Trevor did mention, we are predominantly focused on business-related issues, and we understand that that may not make everyone in the room happy. And we understand, and we've heard some feedback already, that, where is the forum for those wider spread issues? And while I would love to be able to address all of them, we only have so much time in an evening. The Chilliwack Chamber and the BIA are business organizations. We represent businesses, and we have to represent the members that are part of our organizations. So for that reason, that is why we predominantly focus on business. We will do our best, if the candidates so wish, to get the questions to them. I also know that some of them have offices around town, some of them are door knocking, but you can find them online. They're very accessible. So if you do have questions that don't get answered tonight, please find a way to reach out to them and get your question answered. I will take the broader feedback back that we do need maybe more of a more community forum in the future elections, so more people can come. So we are aware, but please bear with us as we get through this evening. The first 5 questions have been pre-selected and provided to the candidates in advance. And these are questions that have been submitted to us on behalf from our members. We will use the remaining time to address the top questions from the Slido app, as mentioned. Candidates, you have 2 minutes each for opening remarks. And I've sort of gone through and I've made it, you all get a chance to go first, you all get a chance to go second, third, fourth, etc. So it's going to be fair all the way through. So please don't worry if someone goes before you just to start off the rounds. You'll all get a chance throughout the evening. But you get 2 minutes for opening remarks, 2 minutes to answer each question, and then at the end you'll get 2 minutes for closing remarks. You also each have been provided a little card in front of you. That is a response or a rebuttal card. So if you wish to speak to any question or any of the topics for an additional 2 minutes, please just wave your card and I will circle back to you once the other speaker has finished speaking. Our goal this evening is to provide the business community with the answers that they need, and we appreciate you all being here to participate and give us your best reasons for what you're going to do to change things or make it better. So I do want to give you a quick recap of some of those key priorities raised by the Chilliwack business community, provided to both the Chamber and the BIA. And these topics, the first 5 questions we'll address are agriculture and food innovation, education and workforce development, crime and public safety, transportation and infrastructure, and rising business costs. So as we move forward with tonight's forum, we'll be focusing on how the candidates plan to address these important issues raised by our business community, and then we will take questions from Slido. Everything is clear? We're good? Ready to get started? Cool.
I don't know why I got nervous all of a sudden. Didn't feel this way earlier. I think it's because there's 4 of you and not just 2. Okay. Oh, hold on a sec. I think I might have lost my notes. Nope, got it. Okay. So I've randomly selected who goes first. And for candidate intros, we are going to start with Dan Coulter. And you're up.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Leanna. Thanks for putting this on. I want to thank the Chamber. I want to thank Trevor as well, and the Downtown Business Improvement Association. And more importantly, I want to thank all of you for being here for this very important all candidates meeting. I've lived in Chilliwack for 20 years, and I've been a very active member of our community. You know, I used to be a millwright in a sawmill, so I come from a working class background where I had a pretty terrible industrial accident. But I've been very involved in this community, involved in different nonprofit organizations. I was on the school board for 7 years, part of that as chair, and with Heather. It's great, and it's great to be running against you, Heather. I also served as your MLA for the last 4 years. And I'm proud of a lot of what we have done. You know, we've come through a lot of challenges: a pandemic, global high interest rates, major weather events like the floods, also inflation, global inflation. And we've come through it as a strong province, all together, and it's because we were together that we have come through so well positioned after the pandemic. And that's a testament to the people in this room and to all of British Columbians. I'm proud to be on David Eby's team. I am very grateful. He is going to tackle some of the issues that we most care about in this province. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Up next is the other Dan, Dan Grice.
Thank you, thank you. My name is Dan Grice, as is mentioned. I hope I'm not going forward as the other Dan, but I am a Dan as well. I'm also a lawyer, I'm a parent, I'm someone who's deeply committed to seeing the health and vibrancy of Chilliwack improve, and I'm running as an independent because I, frankly, am tired of partisan politics and what it has done to our discourse and how it basically stops real solutions and collaborative. I think legislators should be working together to solve problems, and all I really see is basically two parties constantly fighting against each other and putting the interests of our community second. One of the reasons I decided to run was because in the spring, out of nowhere, the NDP decided to put forward legislation that would abolish the Law Society, and for me that's a threatening my independence as lawyers and my ability as a lawyer and my colleagues not just to defend ourselves, but to defend all of your rights when the government is an adversarial party in a matter. On the other hand, I didn't really see any other options in this election that really stood out for me. With the Conservative Party platform, all I could see was promises to muzzle teachers, to remove valuable anti-bullying programs, and to basically, I've seen promises on their website. I don't know what it's today, but at the beginning of the campaign, they had a promise to slash university funding. And for me, as someone who really cares about the future of our education and wants to see really children being lifted up, and for me, that was just unacceptable. But in addition to those policies, I consider myself someone who's fiscally responsible. I believe in balanced budgets. I believe that government shouldn't be going around promising tax cuts until they find a way to pay for their programs. I also am someone who believes strongly in democratic reform. I believe we've got some problems with our electoral system and even how we vote that basically shut down diverse voices. As we saw from the collapse of United, we need a system where we can rank politics so we're not worried about vote splitting.
Thank you, Dan. Heather.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, that was you. I don't know if it's me or you. But... Okay.
Sorry, Heather.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank the Chamber as well for the opportunity to share my opinions and the Conservative of BC's opinions. As most of you know, I was elected as a school trustee in Chilliwack in 2008, and I've served in that capacity for the last 15 years. I was motivated at the time by my concerns around reading acquisition skills for our young students. Over the years, I've advocated for prioritizing basic academic skills for all students, and I've advocated for parental rights as it pertains to decisions regarding their children. More recently, I became increasingly frustrated with some of the actions and decisions of our provincial government, which leads me to today, to my decision to be a candidate for the Conservative Party of British Columbia. Today, the increased drug and addiction issues, compounded by our current government trafficking free drugs, has been a heartbreaking and dismal failure. The shortage of medical staff after imposing mandates that caused thousands of healthcare workers to resign or be removed from their jobs has compounded the dire straits we find ourselves in regarding healthcare staff and accessibility for our citizens. The cost of living and the staggering provincial debt is contributing to the hopelessness of our young people and has affected our young families with financial overwhelm and discouragement and little hope for the future. As an involved community member, mother and grandmother, I believe it is time for new ideas and common sense change. Thank you.
And last but not least, Tim.
Thank you, Leanne. And thank you especially to the Chamber of Commerce for giving us a chance to get our message out there instead of having people rely on counting the number of non-recyclable plastic lawn signs, which the Green Party still has to use the same signs. Who am I? Well, my journey to this seat started the last day of high school when my physics teacher told the class, we've left you with two major problems, nuclear war and the greenhouse effect. I've spent my life worried about those two, but increasingly the greenhouse effect. I chose to continue my career in physics, and I've been in the university's community for a long, long time, ending up at UFV after stints in Ohio and Indiana, where I stayed for 30 years. So I'm a Chilliwack resident for 30 years. At UFV, I got some experience in politics when I became the union president, and if you don't believe me, I have the blood pressure to prove it. It's not happy. But I have always been wanting to avoid politics, and after I retired, I thought that was it. But I looked at what was happening in BC. Are we actually making progress? Are we doing our fair share of progress? And the answer to that was no. BC has a massive LNG industry coming up and a massive gas industry, and we are punching way above our weight on causing global pollution. Those of you who follow it will know we have 5 years left, approximately, before we hit the tipping point, and this election is for a 4-year term. So I was okay until David Eby came out and cancelled the carbon tax, which was a very effective tool. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm running. So here I am, running for the Green Party. I am middle of the road. I'm neither right nor left. North America is polarized, but I have not, and neither is the Green Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So we're going to get right into the first 5 questions that were sent to you in advance. And it looks like for question 1, it's going to be in the exact same order that we went in that time around. Don't worry, it changes, I promise. So we're going to start with, which is probably fitting, I think, at this point, infrastructure and transportation. Can you outline, this is to Dan Coulter, can you outline the concrete steps and timeline your government will take to expand Highway 1 through to Chilliwack, as well as to talk about or look at implementing a comprehensive 20-year infrastructure plan, including flood mitigation strategies? And please be specific about funding sources.
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Leanna. I really, really appreciate it. As Minister of State for Infrastructure and Transit, I've worked on this issue quite a bit. We've accelerated the Highway 1 corridor project. We understand the frustration of all drivers who get stuck in there going to and from work, businesses who can't get their goods up and down the freeway. I get stuck there all the time, so I understand everyone's frustration with Highway 1. And that's why we're improving the corridor. We'll be putting on a HOV lane, a bus on shoulder lane, and a parallel multi-use pathway. We've accelerated the program. I think many of you will have noticed the construction that's happening along the corridor. We have nearly 40 kilometers under construction right now. It happens at night, so some people may not see the machinery moving during the day. But we have, more than that. We are going to also get the West Coast Express to Chilliwack, which is absolutely amazing that we'll now have a train that will get us all the way to Vancouver. I know people have been fighting for this for years and talking about it for a long time, and I'm very excited that our government will deliver on it, like we are delivering on the Fraser Valley Highway project. Now, another thing I've been intimately involved in is a Fraser Valley transportation strategy plan. And so we are working with others to come up with that plan, and it will be a long-term plan of what transportation looks like in the Fraser Valley. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And over to Dan Grice. Would you like me to repeat the question?
I'm okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So, as an independent, I'm obviously not going to be the government. I mean, I'd love to be, but my goal is to be someone who represents the community. I'm not going to be crossing the floor and jumping sides, but I'm going to be the person in there constantly keeping on the governments to make sure that they fulfill their commitments on this as well. We've had a member of the government in this riding, you know, for the last 20-some years at least. And what I've seen from that is a lot of these projects just have not advanced. So having someone in the government doesn't necessarily always get these projects moving forward. But the big thing is when it comes to both the funding of major projects, and I'll definitely support the highway expansion, and I know how frustrating it is because I have an office in Abbotsford, I go back and forth, and I have clients all over the Fraser Valley, and I know exactly how problematic that is. But you know, I also want to look and talk about things like the dikes and about fires and where is that money coming from? And so it was very, very disappointing again, and one thing I agree with my colleague here, Tim, on, is when at the beginning of this campaign, I see all the parties just abandoning the carbon tax. Well, the carbon tax has two purposes. One is to basically put a price on pollution and try to help deal with the climate crisis, but it's not really solving the climate crisis. It's also a great a means to actually pay for some of these things that we need to do. And this is the problem I've seen, is we've been raising this carbon tax every year, but we haven't been earmarking it. That money should, every single cent that we want to raise from that carbon tax, anytime it goes up, that money should be going to protect the forest fighting budgets. That should be going into dikes. That should be going into mitigation. Because we may not be able to stop climate change, but we're going to have to deal with the problems of that. And we need those sources of fundings. We can't just go around cutting and say, well, now where's this money going to come? We need to be focusing on solving these problems, and we need to make sure they're funded.
Thank you, Dan. And I believe it's over to you, Heather. Would you like me to repeat the question?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's good, thank you. So Highway 1 is such a frustration to so many of us that live here. When you have a medical appointment in Vancouver, you don't know if it's going to take you 3 hours to get there or 1 hour if you're lucky. The Conservatives of BC are committed to expanding the highway to Chilliwack, not to Abbotsford, not to Maahs, but to Chilliwack, 6 lanes. We're also committed to not implementing tolls, no matter what you hear. And regarding TransLink, a shortfall of $600 million a year is not acceptable. Therefore, the Conservative government is going to be funding TransLink for 2 years and then having an audit and looking towards reform. Regarding the floods, I understand work has been done to bring First Nations, regional and provincial voices to the table to discuss mitigation strategies, but the significant piece needed is funding to address proactive flood preparedness rather than dealing with recovery after the damage is already done. Thanks.
Thank you. And Tim, would you like the question read?
No, I'm okay, thank you. Okay, yes, I live in Chilliwack. Like everybody else, I know there's a problem with the highway. I'm going to take a slightly different tack, though, so as you have a choice, and if you feel the need to throw fruit, I hope your aim isn't good. We've had situations all around the world where highways have got jammed up. It happened in Toronto, and they started building more lanes on the 401. They've now got up to 22 lanes each way, and they still get traffic jamming up. So in the short run it can work, but in the long run it doesn't seem to work well. I would really prefer to look at a solution involving high speed, not super high, but fast rail, 160 kilometers an hour through the valley. There are various groups advocating that. I'm really happy that the NDP has actually brought rail to the valley, not rail to the valley, sorry, the West Coast Express to Chilliwack. And I haven't seen the details of that yet. I should have looked that up before we came. But the West Coast Express is not as fast as trains in other places, and if it's not faster than taking cars, people will still be taking their cars. There is another problem with adding another lane. The Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment has said About 7,000 people die in Canada every year through breathing air that's been contaminated by burning fossil fuels. If you scale for Chilliwack's population, that's 20 people dead every year. If we add lanes, that's going to go up. So that's something to think about. For flood mitigation, I would defer to the hydrologists. I am not an expert, but I have some ideas. There's a long-term problem and a short-term problem. In the long term, sea level rise is going to come so that we'll be sitting here with 5 meters of water above our heads. Nothing can stop that now. We've committed to that. We just don't want to make it worse. But in the meantime, we can do something. We're going to need money to build dikes. Money can come from removing the funds from the gas industry here in British Columbia, who get a...
Thank you, Tim. Sorry. That's the least favorite part of this job over here, is having to cut you off. So I do apologize. I'm going to apologize to each of you in advance in case it happens again. But I've been told that's what I have to do. All right, so moving on. We are going to move on to agriculture and food security. And Dan Grice, you are up first on this one. What precise policies or legislative changes will you introduce to modernize ALR rules and support agri-tech innovations in the Fraser Valley? And how will you ensure these initiatives are prioritized in the first year of your term?
Mm-hmm. Well, as a real estate and business lawyer, I work closely with farmers, and I just know how the agricultural land reserve, even though it's necessary to protect food production, it just really doesn't work for most people. I mean, really what we're seeing today is wealthy people buying up estate farms, and most of our agricultural land is becoming less and less useful for food production, and it's basically just being nice, manicure lawns with maybe occasionally somebody will mow the lawn to try to keep their tax credits down. And that's not working for anybody. So some of the problems that we have with the agricultural land reserve is just how rigid the rules are. I mean, you're allowed to build one 5,400 square foot house, but you can't build two 2,700 or three 1,800 square foot house. You can't build one house and putting a bunch of tiny houses on your property if you want to have some farm workers on there or offer them some place to stay. Basically, we've just created something that's more beneficial for horses than it is for humans. And that's not fair, that's not right, and that's not even attending its purposes. So I will create more flexibility. I will look at, obviously I have to get the parties on side, because as a member of one, all I can do is raise this issue over and over and over again, but that's in my nature to do so. I think that we need to make some flexibility to allow tiny homes on the agricultural land. I mean, another thing that we need to look at doing, and this might be more complex, is right now you cannot partially register a lease against the property. So if you're a young farmer and wants to lease out, some of somebody's property, you just can't have any security. You can make an agreement that's 1 or 2 years, but you can't register something. You can't get financing. You can't get banks on side with you. And this is basically the rules that we have now really hinder any ability for anyone who wants to become a farmer. If you're not already a millionaire, you have no chance of getting into the trade. And another thing I want to promote and basically going to is the idea of strata farms. Similar to how we have condos, basically allowing 2 or 3 people to go together to have their small houses and to come up with a joint way to use those lands. We need solutions.
Thank you, Dan. Heather, would you like me to read the question?
No, that's fine. Okay. Thank you. So the issue for farmers is so that they can have food processing on the ALR as well. The ALR land is something that can prioritize locally produced food and beverages in stores, giving British Columbians better access to homegrown products. We need to ensure farmers have protected and long-term access to water for irrigation and livestock. The Conservative Party will focus on ensuring farmers have the infrastructure and market access they need to bring their products to consumers. We need to increase local food processing capacity within the ALR usage. So last summer, 2 summers ago, there was a series of videos that we saw where the NDP government was going in and they were shutting off the water to the farmers in not this valley, the next valley, who are growing alfalfa. The alfalfa was coming to Chilliwack to feed the dairy cows. Of course, the dairy cows are going to be delivering milk to the whole lower mainland. And when you're shutting off water to be environmentally friendly, and yet the farmers had proof that the level of water was the exact same as it had been in previous years, but they shut the water off on them just before they were about to harvest their crops. So ensuring that they have rights to the water for their agriculture is very important.
Thank you, Heather. Tim, are you good with the question?
Thank you very much. Yes, my answer is a bit shorter. So for the previous question, I was just about to say we are actually subsidizing the gas industry here to the tune of about $2.5 billion. That's controversial because what is a subsidy? What do you count? But actually, if you use that for dikes, we'd be in good shape. Meanwhile, to the actual question, during the last years of my career at UFV, in collaboration with Professor Long, I worked on a bee farm project in Rosedale, involved in agri-tech, designing and building equipment to actually automate the honey extraction process. We struggled with it. It would have really helped if UFV had had an engineering degree. We would have had engineering professors to consult with. We would have had engineering students to consult with. But here in the Valley, agri-tech, like other high-tech, is struggling because there's no source of engineers for the Valley. So I would love to actually see the government direct funding to UFV or some other institution in the Valley to say, hey guys, put on an engineering program. We need engineers. Because without those people, building is tough. You'd have to direct the funds, but I'll talk more about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And Dan Coulter.
Thank you, Leanna. We do know, obviously, that it's very difficult for farmers out there right now, especially dealing with the effects of climate change. It's very hard for them to, like Heather said, get the feed for their cows, and many other things. So we're looking, I also hear a lot from the city council, local farmers, all sorts of people that are talking about using ALR land to do some agricultural processing. It is something we need to do. It does not make sense to ship food far away to be processed to just come back. It creates greenhouse gases and it costs us too much money. So we're establishing a Premier's Task Force on looking at ALR land and its best uses with other stakeholder groups, and this is something that the BC Agricultural Council wanted. Another thing we're doing is to open up ALR land to agricultural processing. We'll have agricultural parks, agri-tech parks or agri-industry parks, very similar to what we have in Chilliwack now over near where the Molson Brewery is. So the government will buy up ALR land near near services, and also with poor soil quality, hopefully. And then we will lease that out to folks who want to participate in agri-industry. So we'll create these zones all over British Columbia, and that will also keep speculators out of ALR land.
Thank you, Dan. Question 3 is going to be around crime and public safety. And first up on this one is going to be Heather. Given the current challenges with crime and public safety in our community, what specific measures will you implement to increase law enforcement resources, improve mental health and addiction services, and improve urban safety? Please provide details on funding and timelines.
Hello? Okay. So the Conservative, am I on? There we go. The Conservatives of BC are committed to reversing the decriminalization of hard drugs. We must prioritize increased funding for law enforcement, no more soft sentencing, and revolving door of justice system that puts criminals back out on the streets. Our streets are being poisoned by fentanyl and deadly drugs, and the NDP has failed to stop it. A Conservative government will launch an all-out assault on organized crime and crack down on drug smuggling. The Conservatives have stated that it will crack down on criminals importing and distributing fentanyl and other deadly drugs, work with the federal government to improve border security, both on land and on sea, secure BC's ports. A report on the news recently stated that only 1% of shipping containers are being scrutinized. By reinstating reliable funding for the RCMP, waterfront joint forces operations, and expanding the number of officers. And finally, we need to use every regulatory tool to remove fentanyl precursors from the streets and prevent the production of deadly drugs.
Thank you, Heather. Tim, would you like me to read the question?
No, okay, thank you. This is not to diminish in any way what the police are doing, and I would not say no to another policeman somewhere around, but sometimes the best security does not always come from another policeman. It can come from reducing the incentive for crime. In my own experience, I have an extended family member who was addicted to fentanyl and to crystal meth when he was 13 years old. He's now 31 years old, and he spent his whole life drenched in opioids. He has no concept of a life without opioids. So when you ask him, well, please stop taking them, that's just not going to work. Somehow we need to deal with people who are as heavily addicted as him, but also more lightly addicted. We need to get people off drugs who can come off drugs, but we need to have safe injection places with clean drugs for the people who cannot. This is exactly what Dr. Bonney told the government, although they didn't listen very closely a few months ago. The Green Party also has a way of reducing crime, taking away the need for it, by having a universal minimum income program that we believe would drop crime.
You're done, Tim? Okay, thanks. Just wanted to make sure. Looks like Dan Coulter, you're up next.
Yes, thank you for the question. This affects a lot of people. I hear about it every day, about stories about crime, how it affects people, and how it affects small businesses. That's why we have do have a small business grant to prevent crime and also to repair their businesses from vandalism. And I have talked to the Chamber quite a bit. I work with the Chamber and work with many of you, as well as Trevor McDonald from the Downtown Business Improvement Association, to make that program better. We're also we have recreational programs for kids, sports and cultural things for them to do to keep so that they develop better ideas of the way to live and not get involved with drugs and crime. I'll just say that listening to the Conservative Party talk about organized crime gets my back up a little bit. There were people taking duffel bags full of crumpled $20 bills into casinos and laundering them when John Rustad was in cabinet. They were not seizing the assets of gangsters. Now we have a program where if a gangster has a very expensive, whether it's a watch or a car or a house, they have to prove where the money came from. or we seize it. And we've seized Hells Angels clubhouses because of it. And it's a very important tool to prevent organized crime.
Thank you, Dan. Dan.
You know, crime and what's happening in our communities, it's absolutely frustrating. It's, I think anyone in this room has probably had, something stolen, whether it's your kids' scooters, your own stuff from your front yard. You can't leave anything locked. You can't really leave anything of value locked up. If you're a small business, chances are you're just counting how much stuff was stolen at the end of any week. And we have a small business ourselves, and we know exactly, the frustration with that. But when it comes to crime, public safety in BC, these are complex issues that you just cannot separate from the broader problems of addiction, homelessness, mental health, and poverty. And so we really need to look at, every possible solution. We need to put everything on the table. I mean, I deal with the states, and I see parents and family members dealing with, the loss of a family member through fentanyl, and it's just absolutely sad. We just can't be pulling stuff and tools off the table. And so there was a long time ago, and this was, at one point, all the parties agreed on this, back in the early 2000s. It was called the 4 Pillars approach, and that's focusing on education, keeping people off drugs in the first place, looking at prevention in that matter. We're looking at, you do need harm reduction. You do need to make sure that we have methods to deal with the fentanyl, because as much as we like to pretend we can lock down the ports, fentanyl is so incredibly small that somebody can bring enough for, who knows how many doses in a cell phone. It's not like old cocaine where people are doing bricks and bricks and bricks. It's not something you're going to be able to stop the production of. You just have to stop the demand for it. And that's what government needs to do to basically stop some of these addictions. But we do have to look at all the pillars as well. We do need policing. We should be looking at a way to basically charge people with homicide if they're selling tainted drugs. We need all these solutions on the table, and we just can't be putting any of the solutions off and saying, you know what, we just want to get rid of this one and focus on that one. It's not going to work.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, thank you for your comments. We're going to move on to question number 4, the rising cost for businesses. What targeted financial, Tim Cooper, you're up first. What targeted financial incentives and tax relief programs will you enact within the first 12 months to help businesses manage rising operational costs? Please include specific examples and how you will ensure these measures are accessible to businesses in Chilliwack and the Fraser Valley.
Okay, businesses are the background of our economy. And a healthy business is a business that can grow, and a business that's growing is part of an economy that's going to be growing. So businesses are, in many ways, the center of society. From China to Poland, the vast improvement in people's lives that we've seen when they made the switch from socialism to capitalism was undeniable, very clear. We need a more capitalistic society, but at the same time, capitalism is very, very good at generating wealth, except that it tends to go just to the top. We need some government intervention to help distribute, especially a social safety net, money for schools, hospitals, and so on. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce, not the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce said in 2018 something which I think is very important. I quote, "The business community in Canada is solidly backing carbon pricing as the way for it to play its part in the fight against climate change." Now, why would the business people say that? Because carbon pricing is the most cost-effective way of going about reducing emissions. Any other way is going to hurt business and people more. Once the carbon tax is raising revenue, as Dan actually said, it can offset business taxes in general. More businesses could then reduce the tax they pay simply by reducing the carbon that they produce. I'm going to jump to my last point. An expense that practically every business has is electricity. With wind and solar now being far, far cheaper than any other source, BC can benefit from a large expansion in generation of electricity from these sources. The NDP has got it mostly correct in doing that. The Conservatives suggest nuclear, which is the most expensive way of generating electricity, and businesses will pay the price. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Dan Coulter.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, costs are rising on businesses just like they're rising on everyone else. Global inflation, supply chain issues, obviously bad weather events, or increasingly severe weather events. We have done a few things for businesses during the pandemic. For example, we gave businesses $25,000, small businesses, a grant, $25,000 to keep their doors open. We gave an accessible grant to businesses in our community. I know the Bookman, which is one of the best bookstores in the province. People come to Chilliwack just to go to that bookstore, but now they have an accessible front door so that I can press a button and get into their business without too much effort, which is pretty important, not just to me, but a lot of different people. You know, we're also cutting red tape for BC's restaurants, wineries, distilleries, breweries, by moving to a risk-based licensing that focuses enforcement on businesses that pose the most risk. We're also going to be working with businesses and entrepreneurs. We'll have a council where we are going to work with them to discuss barriers to business in British Columbia. We also have a tax rate that we dropped the tax rate on small businesses, and it's actually 20% lower than it was under John Rustad when he was in the. Oh.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't even have to push a button, it just did it. Dan Grice, would you like me to read the question?
No, I should be okay. I'm a business lawyer. I've probably helped clients start hundreds of companies over the years and work with them quite closely. And my own spouse, I've helped. We've got our own company as well. So we absolutely know. Yes, your product prices are coming through. The minimum wage has gone up for some businesses who relied on low-cost workers aren't able to do that. Municipal taxes are going up, and most businesses are on triple net leases. So you do have all these costs going up. But I can tell you from the business community and from my own clients and personal experience, it's not necessarily the costs they're worried about, it's the lack of revenue. I mean, it's getting the business and your more volume coming into your store in the first place, and that's the hardest thing. I've seen numerous companies basically go bankrupt now, especially in flooring and improvements, home improvements, because of the high interest rates. And obviously, as a provincial party or a provincial government, you can't really override the Bank of Canada, but really I'm hoping those rates start coming back to normal levels, because it's really affecting everyone's financing. But mostly, when it comes back to expanding revenue, it is expanding the pie. And one of the major things that I think that we need to be looking at in province, and coming out of COVID, the tourism sector has been extraordinarily ignored. And we really need to be looking at interprovincial tourism and boosting the amount of people who are spending money in this province. And that's going to take the businesses, and that's going to help everybody without necessarily trying to give out free grants. The goal isn't necessarily to have government step in and backstop everything. It's to basically let people flourish, and that's what we really need to focus on for the benefit of our businesses, is looking at ways that we can just bring more people in the door. And I think if we get that solved, then that's going to help from every step forward. So that's my view on this question. I'm not going to be promising handouts, but I'm going to be promising someone who's going to really focus on the needs of the business community and really just focus on helping them succeed.
And over to you, Heather.
Thank you. So the Conservative government, the Conservative Party recognizes small business as the backbone of the provincial economy. Small business owners are heroes of our economy, but the NDP has burdened them with unnecessary taxes, red tape, and crime in the downtown cores. We need to ensure they are not unfairly taxed when having to deal with crime and safety issues that affect their businesses. We also need to cut the carbon tax, and this government has pledged, the Conservative Party has pledged to do that. The Conservative government has also pledged to cut small business taxes significantly. We need to target cities to reduce approval times for building permits and business licenses by publishing benchmarks and wait times to hold cities accountable. And again, we need to restore local consultation at the municipal level.
Thank you. So the last question of the pre-selected questions is around education and workforce development. And up first on this one is Dan Coulter. Yep, Dan Coulter. How will you directly increase funding and expand programs at the universities within the Fraser Valley to align with the needs of local industry? And what measurable outcomes will you commit to achieving within your first term to ensure our workforce development meets regional demands?
Thank you very much for the question. There is no doubt that businesses are struggling for workers right now for labor, as it is across the economy. It's not just a problem here in BC, it's a global problem right now, actually. And it's very, very difficult. So we're taking some actions when it comes to training up workers. Just last week or the week before, I can't remember, campaigns are like one long big day and you never get too much of a rest. Just a short time ago, we were at a training site and the Premier came and he announced that we are going to double apprenticeship spots in British Columbia, and we'll be doing that before our next term. Double. We're also removing barriers to folks who are actually on apprenticeship. So we're removing any kind of barriers around childcare or travel or many other things that might get in the way of them actually being able to participate in apprenticeship. Childcare is really, really important. And it actually brings a lot more people into the workforce, and that's why our government is creating the first ever universal childcare program ever in this province, and it's helping everyone. I know, just someone very, very quickly, I know a family that saved $40,000 because of the $10 a day childcare program. It's just so valuable and immeasurable. So, thank you.
Thank you. Dan Grice.
You know, I've got a couple university degrees actually, and I absolutely value, the value of university. And I think we definitely need to make sure that we support the University of Fraser Valley just to get vibrant programs and more programs out in this area. It used to be nice and easy, when I was there, I grew up in the Fraser Valley. You could go down to UBC, used to be cheap, affordable housing down there, and it was fine. You'd got a place to live, and you could come back and deal with it. And now you can't find housing down by UBC. You can't. The commute to go into UBC from Chilliwack's just too much for any university student to be able to effectively do that in campaigning. So we really just need to make sure we support the local colleges. And we need to make sure that students feel encouraged to be able to take these programs of all different matters as well. Because we have a lot of shortages right now. We have teacher shortages, we have healthcare shortages, we have industrial shortages. So we basically do need to make sure that we focused and our young people, we can drive them into all of these ones. So I don't really want to say I'm just going to focus on one area of the education and just ignore others, because we need a whole broad variety of it. And we do need to make sure that still, even within the course of some of the academics, one of the things that would be a simple change with the universities to encourage is just to, those taking English or any kind of degree, is that they have, as part of their undergraduate curriculum options, is a few more skill-based classes. I mean, we do have a lot of people who get a degree and then realize they don't actually have skills to necessarily transition into other jobs as well. So just having universities, allowing some of their credits to go to maybe some accounting courses and some basic practical skills would actually allow people to both proceed and get degrees that excite them and interest them, but make sure that they also have skills that they can enter the workplace afterwards as well. And I think that's really important when it comes to university.
Thank you. Heather?
So a recent survey conducted by the BC Chamber found that the majority of British Columbians agree that increasing production in agriculture and agri-food sector will result in the creation of local jobs. That same, and they also agree that the same would occur with an increase in production of forestry, mining, and natural gas sectors. So what we learned from this is that in the agricultural sector and natural resources sectors, the majority of British Columbians agree that increasing production increases job creation. So it goes without saying that it would be great if our universities expanded programs that aligned with the goals and the needs of these industries. Further to that, I look forward to working with organizations like the Chamber to determine what workforce development needs are outstanding and what areas need to be addressed to ensure progress, growth, and financial stability in our region and in our province.
Thank you, Heather. And last but not least, Tim.
Thank you. At U of V, there's currently 3-year waiting lists for programs like heavy-duty mechanic and electrician. Those wait lists have been around for quite a while, and I'm very happy to hear that the NDP is going to be doubling the number of seats in trades. Thank you. I just think it's a shame it wasn't done earlier, but it's being done now, and that's good. One of the issues at U of V and other institutions to be aware of is that when I first joined U of V 30 years ago, the government would send us money in envelopes, money for science, money for arts, money for nursing, and the value would be different. So for example, upper-level science student would generate about $12,000, first-year art student about $4,000. This is reflecting the cost of putting things on. Skip Basford 20 years ago as our president managed to get the government to change the funding system so that you got one check for a whole bunch of the university programs, excluding trades. And as a result, programs all over the province that were job-focused got cut. In the North Island College, I remember a robotics diploma, which got 100% of its graduated hired into robotics, was cancelled because Psych 101 was cheaper. If we just give money, we're going to get the same result. So I would work with the government. I'd be in a minority position if I went into the government, I know that, but I'd work with the rest of the MLAs to take the funding model back to where the government determines which programs are put on. That would help, and that should be done in collaboration with the Chilliwack locally, with SEPCO and the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce, because they know what's needed better than the university does. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody. We are now finished with our 5 pre-selected questions, and we are now going to move into the Slido portion of the event. So if you have access to that, as we mentioned before, it's through your web browser or through the app. It's just type in Slido. The code is CHWK 2025, as you can see up there. A little joke, I think I forgot what year it was, but anyways, there you go, Chilliwack 2025. We'll get you access to the questions. Please feel free to enter questions, and hopefully they get into the queue. If you don't have access to a cell phone, my staff members, Joe and Heather, are on either side of the room. They're kind of waving at you. Feel free to go and see them if you'd like to get a question in. We will be working off of a priority type sequence. Hopefully my tech works this time, but we'll wing it. And basically the way this is going to go, we're going to fire off questions. One question, 2 candidates will get to answer that question, and then we'll move on to another question. They do still all have their rebuttal or response cards, so if they do wish to speak to a question, they can just flag me down and I'll make sure to track that. If you want your question or a question to get asked, use the little like button. That'll move it up in the queue. The more people that like it, the closer it will get to the top. So that's how that's going to work. And I think that's it. Are you guys ready to go? All right, so the first question, and I have Dan Coulter and Tim Cooper to answer this one. So Dan, I believe you're up first. And the first question is, would your party consider cutting the corporate income tax?
We have a situation right now where families are struggling, small business is struggling. I hear from people who are living from paycheck to paycheck, struggling to get the health care that they need. And we're taking action on those things, but a lot of these problems cost money, and now is not the time to cut. And if you cut a tax, you have to cut services. You'll hear from opposition parties talk about pixie dust solutions, like the economy will just grow and that will pay for the programs. I've watched candidates in debates talk about both cutting taxes and increasing services. You just can't do it. The math doesn't add up. And people need the support right now. I think we all know that, we all feel that, and I think we all need to come together and help each other and lift each other up. Because we really, our strongest part of our economy is our people. And so we cannot let people down. We need to keep investing in the services that they rely on every day. Thank you.
The Green Party, we have a reputation for trying to make things better for the next generation. Obviously protecting the environment, so there's no environmental debt going on, but also fiscally. The Green Party is very unhappy with the concept of running a deficit, or indeed a debt. So at this stage, would we go ahead and do a cut to the corporate income tax? Not just that. I'm reminded of a man in history not too long ago, and I'm old enough to remember, who said, I'm going to cut government. I'm going to increase government spending, I'm going to cut taxes, and I'm going to balance the budget. That man was Ronald Reagan, who ran up the biggest debt in US history at that time, around that time. So no, I definitely wouldn't just think about cutting the corporate income tax. However, if corporations are willing to take on the more efficient carbon tax, then we could talk about cutting the income tax. Because a carbon tax is voluntary. Industries can move things around so they don't end up using as much carbon, don't end up paying as much. So we still get a good result either way.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, Dan is using his first rebuttal card, so you have 2 minutes to speak to that.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, when it comes to taxes, and I kind of briefly had a chance to mention this in my opening there, but as long as we're running this giant deficit, we shouldn't be talking about really any tax cuts. And when it comes down to the corporate tax, I work really closely with businesses and accountants, and we plan out as much planning techniques, but corporate tax is levied on profit. So it's not levied, if you're a business and you're struggling, it's not going to affect you. It's going to be affecting, it's the profitable ones that are actually paying on that as well. I mean, payroll taxes and other taxes are much more damaging to businesses because those come off the top regardless of how profitable you are as well. But you're really only looking at corporate taxes if you're retaining money in the company as well. And retention of money is good if you want to do a project, but it's not, there is enough write-offs that come along there. So it's really a select few companies that benefit from corporate taxes, and I don't think we're really going to be, just by lowering it, it's not going to be attracting new capital here as well. Most people are looking at the investment side, too. So in that scenario, I think we always have to be very clear. Now, whenever we get to an election, it always does scare me, this combination of billions of dollars in new promises and tax cuts. And you don't need to be a physicist like Mr. Cooper here, my friend, to basically say that it just doesn't add up when you want to deal with deficits. Any time that we're having this glaring deficit, and at $8 billion, that's just money that's basically being put by, my kids are going to have to be paying that back at some point. And that's where we have to, and so it's almost scary how many promises that we have during the elections. We just really need to look at ways to spend money more wisely, and then once we got our costs under control, then we can start looking about where we can give money back to people. But we just can't be this deception that we're going to promise the moon and not have a way to pay for it. And corporate taxes is whether you like it or not from the business side, at least it's touching on profitability and it's not focusing on the struggling ones.
Thank you, Dan. All right, so we will move on to the next question. And the next question is going to be Heather and Dan Grice. And this question is, Heather, would you consider freezing or reducing minimum wage? Small businesses are struggling to keep their doors open.
Well, I think a better solution to freezing wages would be cutting small business expenses by, as I had said earlier, cutting the carbon tax and cutting small business taxes. When you cut taxes for people, you actually increase their ability to increase their revenue, to increase their productivity, and when you do that, you give them the ability to hire more people. So it's all a cycle that plays itself out. So would I consider freezing wages? I don't think so. I think that would interfere with the free market and the way it needs to flow.
Thank you. Dan?
Yes, so we've seen the raise of minimum wage. It has gone up across the board, and that has actually been a factor in some of the costs of goods. So it is definitely a cycle that has repeated itself, but it's not something that we can undo. We can't just say, hey, you're gonna, you workers, you're gonna be able to get paid less now, or we're gonna hire some cheaper workers, because at the end of the day, living is more expensive. But one area I think that we do need to look into with the minimum wage is youth. And youth are having an extraordinary time getting a job and getting into the workplace or getting any trials because of that high minimum wage. And if you're a business owner and you're going to say, I have to pay $18 an hour, maybe I'm not going to hire a high school student. I just want to hire a full-time worker, or in many cases we're seeing small restaurants and that trying to bring in foreign workers to fill in these vacancies, just because it's just not viable anymore to hire youth. And so I think we do need to look at not a way to possibly relax the minimum wage when it comes to those who are underage, to basically give kids and high schoolers an opportunity to knock on business doors and say, hey, I can help you out, in return for lower wages. I need that experience. And those are individuals who typically aren't the ones necessarily, having to feed their families. They're living at home. But, and I'm hearing that over and over again. Just my kids can't get a job. There's no one wants to hire them anymore, and that's a direct result of the minimum wage. So while I think for adults, and I think for the vast majority, we need to make sure the minimum wage is there to protect the vulnerable, we also make sure it's not a barrier for people getting a job in the first place, because what good's a minimum wage if you can't get paid anything?
Thank you. All right, and the next question is going to go to Dan Grice and Tim Cooper. And that question is, so we'll start with Dan. How will you make Chilliwack and the Eastern Fraser Valley a priority in your government?
Well, that's probably the easiest for me, because you are going to be my only priority. And I really wish that we, that other people remembered that as well. I think a lot of it, and I actually want to go back to some of my comments about, voting reform as well. We have a system where parties basically just need to get enough votes to win. And they just get enough seats to win. So when it comes to priorities, we just too often see, there's a reason that the freeway stopped at the 200th, construction stopped at the 200th street boundary. They didn't care. It was the Fraser Valley didn't have enough votes in it. Let's focus on getting Surrey. Let's cut the tolls so that Surrey drivers we can get those votes from there. And so this is where I think we need not just one independent in there, even though I hope I do an amazing job representing this community, but we even need those who are speaking who are members of parties to think like independents. We need to have a voting system that scares them enough that they're actually worried about who's running against them. We need a voting system that allows competition in the local riding so that people, when it comes to election, we can get candidates who might care about the local area and who may just want to say, I just want to run on one issue. I want to this issue in my community and raise it without having to worry about splitting the vote. So the ranked ballot that they use in Australia, they use it in Ireland, they use it in other places, it really is a system that really focuses and gets really strong local advocates that we just don't see in BC and Canada. It has people just are so afraid that, hey, the election, I'm not going to be able to run on don't split the vote or don't vote for this party because they'll help that party get elected. No, it really focuses on getting the best candidates and the best democracy involved in that as well. And basically, the voters gives them the power, gives you the power. And I think that's the best way to make sure we represent the community. So I'm going to be there if I get elected. I'm going to be talking about local issues. I'm going to be raising local issues. And I'm not going to be muting myself because the government's hurting my local issue, but I can't say anything because they're my party.
Thank you, Dan. And over to you, Tim.
I think it's fair to say anybody on this stage would be highly motivated to bring local issues to the front when in Victoria, because re-election is always something that we might be thinking about. So we're highly motivated to do that. Whether we can succeed or not, that's a different story. But I can pledge for myself that I will do the very best I can to make sure Fraser Valley issues are heard. But there's no guarantee of success. I have some diplomatic skills, not many, but yeah, I know from the way I speak it doesn't sound like it, but I would use them to do whatever I could, making deals, whatever it takes. But there's no guarantee of success.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, Heather coming in with her rebuttal card. So do you need the question?
No, that's fine. I just want to respond to something that Dan Grice has said, and that is in terms of voting independence. I need to make the point that John Rustad has stated that every one of his MLAs, when elected, will sign a contract, and that is top two priorities. The first priority is community. The second priority is the party. So that means free votes. Now, it probably wouldn't be on every single issue, but on many issues, he's given the party, he will give the party the freedom to vote for their communities as they see fit. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. All right, so the next question, Heather, you're going to take this one again, and then over to Dan Coulter. Chilliwack is overwhelmed with homelessness, addiction, and mental health issues, compromising public safety. How do you plan to address this issue?
Well, I have to speak, of course, for the party I myself have no power without a party behind me. So one of the things that the party has spoken about is replacing the injection sites with treatment centers. The free drugs, the injection sites have turned into dens where the drug dealers go in and they're selling the drugs. They're actually selling the safe drugs as well. And so there needs to be a root of the problem solution, not putting Band-Aids on it, but the root of the problem, which is addiction. And it's very serious. I mean, We know that in AA, you're called, they say you're a codependent or enabler if you don't hold the alcoholic's feet to the ground. And that's what we need to do in terms of addicts who really need help. And so I think it's time to stop enabling the drug addicts to continue on, and it's time to really seriously help them with treatment centers.
And Dan Coulter.
Thank you very much for the question. I really appreciate the question. You know, folks are struggling out there with addictions, homelessness, mental health issues, sometimes a combination of those things. And there's no easy solution or slogan that will help us get out of this. We all have to work together, and we have to look after each other. And we can't just say that we're going to you know, sweep these people off the street, or whatever the opposition is saying about it. It is not that simple of an issue, and you know, these folks need our help. Absolutely need our help. You know, John Rustad, I'd like to maybe pose a question to Heather. John Rustad was for safe consumption sites before he was fully against safe consumption sites, before now he's sort of for safe consumption sites. You just said that your party is going to stop safe consumption sites. Is that the position of the party now?
Heather, would you like to use one of your cards to respond?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Dan? Grice.
That sounds good. Oh, well, I want to address this, the issue of homelessness, and I actually wanted to go back to what I was talking about earlier with some of the flexibility in the agricultural land reserve. You know, right now we have homelessness, you know, that's obvious, visual on our streets. We have trailer camps up and down the rivers of people just trying to find a place to live. People are just looking for a place to live, and the price and rents are just so expensive now that we have to realize that we should be looking to legalize housing. Right now it is incredibly difficult for anyone to come up with places. You can't just buy a piece of property and say, hey, I want some homes on this. I want to build some, you know, some options. And this is where I think with agricultural land reserve is allowing and legalizing tiny homes. We've seen this in other jurisdictions. They're just amazing. They're small places. You know, they don't really require much space. You're not taking away much of your food production capability. You're not putting asphalt all over the property. You're just building some place for someone to live. And if we just legalize that tomorrow, and farmers were able to put 7 or 8 of these on there and just walk down the street to homeless and say, hey, I got a place for you to live. All I'm expecting you to do is just help me with farm, just, you know, help around the farm just a couple hours a week. I think we'd cut the homeless, you know, crisis in BC in half in a week with no cost to the government at all. You know, that's what we need, is we need to look at solutions. We have people that are saying, you know what, all I want to do is I've got a trailer. I just want a place to live and park my trailer. And these guys are being shuffled from park to park. You know, you go down any intersection or cul-de-sac after hours, and there's 4 people in their cars sleeping there. Let's find a way to legally find a place for these people who that's how they want to live, just to live. We don't need to keep on shoveling people around the province. We just need solutions. We need humanity. And I think the government just needs to look around and say, hey, can we just be a little more flexible and find some ways that people can live?
Thanks, Dan. And Tim?
Yeah, homeless people, I tend to see them more as victims rather than as lapsed people that have somehow not made the grade and driven themselves into drugs or dropped out of school. Not because maybe they have deserved it in some strange way, but the most important word about homeless people is people. They need our help. Now, this is not a unique problem to British Columbia. It's all over the Western world at the present time. So rather than dipping into our own political philosophies, I think it's very good to look around the whole rest of the Western world to see what everybody else is doing. Maybe somebody's had a better idea. In particular, Finland has decided their way of dealing with homeless people is to give them homes. Instead of saying, well, we've got to get you off drugs first, and then maybe we can give you some money and maybe you can get a job, they just say, no, everybody needs a home, you have a right. And the government builds people housing. Oh, it's not a great house, you've got a one-bedroom apartment essentially, but it's a home. Then you've got a street address. Then you can apply for government aid, you can apply for jobs. It lifts them up. Let's worry about giving them a home first, and let's then worry about getting them off drugs and other problems they might have later. And because I'm so far right-wing, I love this, because it's far cheaper. You save more money on the courts and the police than you do on building the houses in the first place.
Thank you, Tim. All right, I think we have time for, probably just one more question before we move into closing remarks. So I'm going to digress a little bit here, and there was a question that came up in the round one forum that I really liked, and I think I'd like to throw that question to you guys. We'll just maybe go back to Dan to Heather, this kind of direction in that order, if you guys are okay with that. So Dan, what would you tell a potential voter who likes you as a candidate, but dislikes the party that you represent?
Great question. Absolutely great question. And I saw that it was part of the last all candidates meeting, and I was like, I want to answer that question because we've worked together in this community. I've worked with folks in this room that don't like my party, that have different political philosophies. Don't worry, I won't point you out. And we've been able to achieve great things together. I mean, we have the Paramount housing project downtown, which is amazing for seniors, and one floor for youth that are aging out of care. And their rent is $450 a month. It's absolutely wonderful project. You know, together, we've been able to build schools. We've been able to get a Car 67 program where a police officer is in a car with a psychiatric nurse, so that it isn't always police who are responding to mental health incidents. So I've worked with many of you in this room, and I'm excited to keep doing it. And that is what I would say to someone who likes me but might not like my party.
Thanks, Dan. Tim?
Same question for me. Well, I would say to them that the Green Party is fairly small. I might end up half the Green Party, and I can change the Green Party to be like me, which is something the other candidates can't say. But seriously, my views and values are very close to the Green Party views and values, so I don't think this would happen in the Greens, but I could be wrong.
Thank you, Tim. Well, Dan, just go for it.
I don't have this problem. I hope everybody likes me, and you know, maybe even those who don't like some of my policies may like me as well. And so, in that sense, but the reality is, if I'm elected, I will work with any party who's in government, and any party who's in opposition. I am a policy wonk. You know, I'm a geek at heart. I believe in legislation. I read legislation for my job every day. I have to explain it to people and understand and translate it for them. And you know, and most of my clients, many of them probably have views that don't always agree with me on politics. And I mean, I don't talk with them about politics, but I've always found that I can just work with people across the board. Because when you focus on your goal, on what you need to achieve, and not trying to curry favor by pumping scandals out there, I think if we got to that point with government, then everybody would be, regardless of the parties, everybody would be liking their candidates. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to really refocus politics to make sure that the individuals and the candidates themselves and what they do in their community, it's not party first. It is people first and communities first.
Thank you, Dan. Last but not least, Heather.
Thank you. Well, I've actually had this situation in my door knocking. I knocked on a door and the guy opened the door and he said, "Oh, sorry, I'm an NDPer." I said, "Okay, no problem." So then I left. And I got a message from him 2 days later saying, "I've changed my mind. I'm going to vote Conservative." And he said, "Thank you for being an alternative." And I said, "Well, you're welcome." And I guess he had thought about his decision and decided that he liked the policies of the Conservative Party better. So I think what it comes down to is it's representation. It's too bad that there's so much polarization between parties, because really it's a matter of doing what's right for the people of this province. Really, that's what we're all here for. I don't know, I think, if somebody actually said to me, "Well, I like you, but I don't like your party," then I would ask them questions and find out why, and, maybe bridge the gap. And so it was kind of a convoluted answer all over the place, but yeah, so I think that's, the bottom line is we're all here to represent and do our best for the people of this province in the legislature, and that's the bottom line.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move into closing remarks. You all have 2 minutes to say your closing remarks, and we're going to start with Dan Coulter.
I just want to once again thank the Chamber and thank the Downtown Business Improvement Association for having this forum. It's crucially important for voters to hear what we have to say. I've been proud to serve Chilliwack for 4 years. One of the things that Chilliwack prides itself on, and I really think Chilliwack is a unique community when it comes to this, is that we work together. We have a lot of nonprofits, we have different levels of government, but we all work together to try and make Chilliwack better. And I can't tell you how proud I am when I get to stand in the legislature and give Chilliwack a shout out for something great it's been working on. And so I just like to continue to serve you in the legislature so that we can continue to work together and do great things together. So thank you very much for coming out to this forum, because I think it's crucial that you hear the different ideas. And there's some stark ideas amongst us here. Let's be honest, it's going to be between the Conservative Party and the NDP Party that are going to form government, and it's going to be close. And I think I think you've heard exactly the worldview that the Conservatives have of British Columbia, which is doom and gloom. I like to try and look to the future and talk about the positive things about Chilliwack and talk about the positive things about British Columbia.
Thank you, Dan. Dan.
Oh, that's out of order. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming here. It's been a pleasure to be able to give a talk in front of somebody that doesn't involve just talking about who your executor is going to be or collapsing land deals. So it's great for having an audience here today, and hopefully I haven't disappointed anyone too much as well. I never thought I was going to be running in this election until a few months ago, and I'm probably pretty glad that I did. I've already lost about 10 pounds. I went out of my way and said, you know what, I don't want to just give a little poster code. I put myself, if you guys haven't had a chance to read in here my riding, I've already delivered about 6,500 to 7,000 of these to the doors. I mean, I put on 22 kilometers on Saturday and 24 kilometers on Sunday, just helping deliver those and getting my message out. So I'm actually running a very serious campaign, and I'm hoping that I have a chance to really to represent you guys in Victoria and everybody in this room here. But if not, thanks for being in attendance today. Thanks for taking part in our democracy. This isn't really, democracy shouldn't be about me or the parties or who's running it. It's about voters. And so whenever we get any opportunity to speak to you guys and answer questions, and we didn't even have enough questions. I wish we had more debates and longer chances for you and the public to answer us questions. But I'm around. If you please feel free to grab some of my flyers. I kind of didn't figure if I can't have a plastic straw for my kids to drink milkshakes, I wasn't going to put a plastic sign. So if anybody wants, I do have some window signs in all my flyers. So I've delivered 6,000 signs around there. I haven't had a chance to go back into areas I've already canvassed to see if they've been up on windows. It'd be nice if they were, but end of the day, it's a democracy, and it's a secret ballot. I don't know how you guys are going to vote, but I do appreciate coming out here. And if anybody feels like, especially if you live in an apartment, I haven't been able to get into many of your apartments just because, if you like what I have to say, please grab a few of these and hand them out to your friends. I got lots at the front there, and I'll be there for a couple minutes afterwards.
Thanks, Dan. Heather.
Well, I think we can all agree that this province cannot keep going in the same direction that we're going in. I hate to be doom and gloom. However, David Eby turned a $2 billion surplus into an $8.9 billion deficit. We just literally cannot keep going in this direction. And so I hope that on October 19th or in any of the advance polls or at the Elections BC office on Mary Street, you'll go down and give the Conservatives a chance to right this ship. It's time for some common sense change in British Columbia. Thank you.
And last but not least, Tim.
I get the last word, in other words. I too would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce, and I'd especially like to thank everybody for coming here. Yes, there are probably, and hopefully, even more people at home watching through the internet, but it's so much easier to be speaking when you can see people that you're speaking to. Dan finished up by mentioning that Heather was sending doom and gloom messages, but I feel a bit missed out there. I thought with my climate predictions for tipping points in 5 years' time, I would have won that award, but apparently not. So, yeah, I do come across a little bit as a one-item candidate, but it's so big. It does dominate my thoughts. It dominates my social life. It dominates my family life, my professional life. So you have to bear with me. But there's not just that to me. I am also very much aware of many other issues that are happening in society. As I've mentioned before, North America is polarized. The left has gone far to the left. The right has gone far to the right, so far that they actually fear each other. They're each trying to do anything they can to stop the other guy getting in. That's unfortunate. The Green Party are in the middle, where the people used to be. So we sometimes struggle getting the votes, but we will stay in the middle, and we will do what we can to protect the environment and indeed the economy for the future. We're already seeing problems from climate change. Most of the increase in food prices come from reduced agricultural production. It's called supply and demand. It does not come from the carbon tax. The carbon tax has been calculated. It's responsible for about 0.3 to 0.33% of the cost of food. If somebody tells you otherwise, ask to see their calculations. Thank you.
Thank you very much to each and every one of you, not only for putting your name forward to run in this election and to provide options for the voters of our community. I think it's incredibly brave of each and every one of you to be up on this stage, so thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us tonight and to share your thoughts, your plans, and your actions towards some of Chilliwack's key business issues. Voters, residents of Chilliwack, thank you so much for coming. We can't thank you enough for being here. Please make sure to get out and vote. Whatever your decision is, do what's right for you. We think that that's super crucial. I don't have a whole, I do want to thank a few people. I'm not sure, I think you see my staff, they're kind of running around waving their hands. There to assist you. Taylor's sitting up front running the timer. So thank you to my chamber staff for all of the back end work that you did to put on tonight's event. Thank you to my board president who is backstage there doing whatever I need him to do and helping moderate some questions on Slido. And then to Trevor McDonald from the Downtown BIA as my partner in crime on this event, my co-host, MC, also helper of all things. So without them, this event wouldn't be possible. So thank you so much to each and every one of them for being here. Again, thank you to all of you. Get out and vote and have a great night.